Good morning, all. Welcome to room 3, where we've got the EV charging session ready to go. So we've got some fabulous speakers today. My name is Christian Handberg. I'm from GL Energy. I'm the electric vehicle lead there. I've known pretty much all of these people through the journey of electric vehicles, and it's been okay. Now I think I tricked myself by having that on mute. So if I now we've got off mute, there's a little bit of a blip there. We get the hang of this now. So like I said, 3 fabulous speakers today. 4 actually. I've known these gentlemen through the journey. They're all experts in their own right, and it's going to be a pleasure listening to them, to be honest. So with that, I'm going to introduce Bryce Gatton. He is the renaissance man of electric vehicles. Realistically, he writes for the Driven. He has been an industry stalwart for a number of years in terms of the standards process, helping people to build electric vehicles through the AVA, and now event organizer. But he has got the mic now to be able to share his thoughts on EV charging. So with that, I'll hand it over to Bryce.
And thank you very much, Christian. Yes, Christian's probably forgotten more about EVs than I've ever learnt about them. He's been in them for quite a while now. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about how fast can you charge as an introduction to the next 3 speakers, because they'll be talking a lot about leads and charging. So I'm going to bring in the technology and the terminology sides just so they can, you'll all know what it's all about before they start. So how fast can I charge today is talked about. I'll go through some definitions. Why is charging different to refueling? How fast you can charge using different outlets, and a bit of a primer there. Then the question of, or answer partly the question, how fast do I really need to charge? And a few little myths along the way. First up, we're all really bad with our terminology and our acronyms. So what I end up doing is doing a slide about what a BEV and a FEV and a few other things are. So the battery electric vehicles, your BEV. FEV, plug-in hybrids, they're the ones that have plugs and that you can recharge the battery and can run on battery alone from time to time. Obviously, with the BEV, it runs all the time on battery. For a HEV, which is the original Toyota Priuses, things like that, they don't have a plug, and they basically are an energy-saving device. It's just saving the energy from braking to put it into a battery to give a boosted acceleration. And of course, you've all heard about the hydrogen car or fuel cell electric vehicle. They're still an electric car, but they use a chemical reaction to turn hydrogen into or create or generate electricity to run an electric motor. And they also need a battery because hydrogen can't be regenerated in the process when you're braking, so they have to use the battery for that. Anyway, that's enough terminology for the moment, or maybe I'll bring in some more. A EVSE, or electric vehicle supply equipment, I've often tried to argue or get people to understand that the AC ones aren't in fact chargers, they're just an automatic power point, but I think I've lost that battle, so I'm now calling them all chargers. So you have your portable ones, you can have your BYO lead type ones, which have a socket that are bolted to the wall and generally slightly higher rates of charge, and a similar version that's a tethered lead that I often recommend for the one at home because it's the easiest to just hang up the lead and move on once you've been charging. And then you've got your DC ones that give you faster charging rates, and they're the ones you see on the highways, and they're the ones that as I'll explain in the next slides, will give you that really good interstate run. So how do you charge? Well, you can, basically, a key point of difference is refueling paradigm is different to a EV charging. Think now, plug and ignore mobile phone model. It's very different to that old fine stop and act as your attendant to the car in whatever weather and having to find the petrol stations, etc. So to me, I always say it takes me 20 seconds to charge, 10 seconds to plug it in when I get home, and 10 seconds to unplug in the morning, unlike having to find all that time and run around to get to a petrol station. I really don't miss going to petrol stations, believe me. Okay, this table looks a bit complicated. I'm not going to dwell on it. It's purely trying to reinforce that point that it's a very different paradigm, and the choice is yours as to how and when and how fast you charge now. So it's the power is in your hands. You're no longer controlled by that fuel price cycle. You can charge whenever you want and how you want. So first, well, actually 3 key things in this table. What am I going to use to charge? And going down that table, they get faster and faster. How fast will each of those options charge my car or a car? In general, they're the speeds that they will charge at the maximum rates. And then what car do I drive? So what I do then is, for me, I have all the next table in my head. So I simplify that to that for what I drive, which is a Kona electric. And it makes it really easy. I actually use all that in my head, but I have also written the math textbook. So I'm a bit of a whiz with numbers perhaps. But if you don't feel quite so confident mental arithmetic, just basically make up a table like that for your car and leave it in the glove box. And this is what all the guys talking after me will be talking about, the different forms of charging and how fast you can charge on each of those systems. So if you're on the highway, your DC charges are the ones that will really get you a long way. And if you're basically at home or visiting a friend, that's where you get into the AC ones at the top. So I always try to use the term maximum kilometers charged per hour. So an ordinary PowerPoint will give me about 15-ish for a Kona, whereas a 7 kilowatt charger on my wall will give me about 45, and I'll be charged overnight. Whereas if you're trying to charge on a PowerPoint as your primary charge, well, as I'll talk about in a moment, A, it could melt, and B, it takes a bloody long time. So key question though is, how fast do I need to charge home? As I said, it takes me 20 seconds, I say, to charge, because I plug in the evening and unplug in the morning. But if you're doing less than 200 Ks a day, that will actually get you there. Overnight charge, less than 8 hours, you do it in the off-peak rate. About $500 to install one, because you actually have to have one going back to the switchboard with a special safety switch. It's not just plug into an ordinary PowerPoint. That's just anywhere in the house. Don't, however, I'll do that. Don't use it as your principal point of charging, because that's what can happen, and it's not uncommon. As an electrician, I've replaced a number of melted power points, leads, etc., and that's just a plug picture of one of them. I always recommend putting in, and that's what the others will probably also say, for your home primary charging, put in just a fixed wall EVSE, either a tethered lead or a BYO lead, and that'll give you a full charge even with my Kona in 9 hours. And they're about 1,500 up, depending on the complexity of the install and the type of charger you put in. I always also point out to people that even using grid electricity, they will be lower carbon dioxide emissions than as if you were running a petrol car. And you can access these PowerPoint slides from the website later on. But briefly, that two grey ones at the right are a 2017 Toyota Corolla, driven in city or all over the place, so the combined cycle, versus an electric car charged on each grid. And you can see in Tasmania, it's 1/4 of a tonne versus 2 tonne in a city cycle, or it'll be a even 1.6, so 1 2/3 tonnes in Victoria versus 2 tonnes. So even on the grid, you're actually doing better. And if you're using your own solar panels or subscribing to green energy, it just gets better and better. And as we green our grid, as Tim spoke about earlier, the more we can move away from fossil fuels and that damaging carbon emissions going into the atmosphere. A little bit about V2X. You've probably all heard that term. V2X is vehicle to grid or vehicle to home. These things are coming and are done via the connector in your car currently, and I think Tim may have more to say about this. Only CHAdeMO does V2X. It's not approved for use here yet, although that is about to change. However, CHAdeMO is on the way out, and pretty much everybody's using the CCS connector. But don't despair, that is actually being developed to do V2X and will be done doing so in the near future, but Tim will talk a little more about that. As I say, conservatively, I say about 2025 before it gets there. I think Tim may beg to differ, but he'll talk about that in his section. To find out more, why not join the AEVA, Australian Electric Vehicle Association, for the enormous sum of $50 a year, or $125 for corporate, or if you're a pensioner or hold a concession card, $25. You'll get access to all of these EV fact sheets. You get a quarterly e-magazine of about 60 to 70 pages, lots of information about EVs, as well as access to all our members who drive EVs around the place and can give you all sorts of tips. And as well, it helps us develop all sorts of policy papers, such as how to fight these EV taxes coming in now. Okay, I've actually finished a little bit early, so that's good. If you've got any burning questions, the Q&A will be at the end of this session, and the copies of the presentation will be made available from the Delegate Connect site in the next few days to a week. Thanks, Christian. And I better unshare.
Thanks, Bryce. That was excellent, as always. So as Bryce mentioned, please post your questions through the Delegate Connect platform, and we will be facilitating those answers at the end of the session.